We're going to find the surface area of a cone. And so if you remember what surface area is meaning you're covering something. So surface area is just when you have a three-dimensional object, you're basically can think of it as painting the three-dimensional object. So if we're talking about a cone, so you can all think of like an ice cream cone. This is an upside down ice cream cone, sugar cone. And so the formula is on the formula sheet, so you don't need to memorize it, but you need to understand it. And so the formula for surface area of a cone, surface area equals pi times r times s, because remember when they're written beside each other that means multiplication, plus pi times r squared. So what is r? R means radius. And so let's say, and it's the radius of the circle in the cone. So it's either going to be the top or in this case the bottom of a cone. So let's say the radius of this cone is 4 meters. That's what r is. R means radius. If you don't know what radius and diameter of a circle are, because remember this part of the cone is a circle, you need to watch the video on my Facebook page of May 3rd of 2015. It talks about radius and diameter. So you need to know that r means radius. That's half of that circle is what the radius is. S is slant height. So we'll write those up here. R is the radius. And S is the slant height. Now we saw slant height before when we were talking about pyramids. And so if you want to go back and watch that, in the pyramid video was on August 27th of 2015. So slant height is different than height. So make sure that when you're doing the problem, they're giving you slant height, or we'll do a problem which you have to find the slant height. The slant height is the length of this side. So let's say this is 7 meters. So it's not the height from the tip down to the base, that's just the height. The slant height is the slanty part of the cone. So it's just the edge of the cone, how tall that is. In this case we're going to say that it's 7 meters. And then here we have plus pi r squared. R again is just the radius, so these r's are the same. And we're going to square it. So once we have the radius and the slant height, we just plug the numbers in to find the surface area. So for this cone, it's pi. Remember, pi is just a number. It's 3.14, and that also is on your formula sheet. So it's 3.14 times the radius. The radius we were given is 4, times the slant height. The slant height we were given is 7. So we just plug the numbers into the formula, plus pi again, 3.14, times the radius squared. So 4 squared. Remember, in order of operations, you always do exponents first, so we have to do 4 squared first. So we just rewrite 3.14 times 4 times 7 plus 3.14 times 4 squared. 4 squared means 4 times 4, which is 16. And then again, remember, order of operations, you do multiplication before you do addition. So we're going to do this multiplication, and we're going to do this multiplication. So you plug those two into your calculator. So 3.14 times 4 times 7, you're going to get 87.92, plus 3.14 times 16, you're going to get 50.24. Then we do the addition. Again, you can plug it into your calculator. 87.92 plus 50.24, you're going to get 138.16 meters, because it was meters was the unit, squared. Remember, anytime we do an area problem, whether it's regular area or surface area, the units are always in squared units. So that can be a key to a question. If your answers are all squared, you know that you're doing some sort of an area problem, that you should look at your area formulas. So that's the answer to this question. We'll do another example. Let's say that they tell us that the slant height is 10 inches, but now they're going to give us the diameter is 12 inches. What's the surface area? And they want us to round it, round the answer to the nearest tenths. Okay, so again, we just plug the numbers into the formula. But remember, we need radius. They've given us diameter. So if the diameter is 12 inches, what's the radius? It's just half of that. So the radius is 6 inches. The slant height is 10 inches. So now we just plug these numbers into the formula. Pi, 3.14 times r. The radius is 6 times s. They've given us 10. Plus 3.14 times r squared. Again, the diameter is 12, the radius is 6, so it's 6 squared. We're going to do the exponent first. 6 squared means 6 times 6. It's not 6 times 2, it's 6 times 6. 36. Plug 3.14 times 6 times 10 into your calculator. 188.4 plus 3.14 times 36, 113.04. You add those two numbers together, you get 301.44. Now the question told us to round it to the nearest tenths. If you don't know how to round, you need to watch the video on my Facebook page. So the tenths position is this position right here. It's the first one after the decimal point. And so if you want to round it to that number, you look to the number next to it. That's less than 5, so we round down. Well, we just leave it the same. And it was inches squared. 301.4 inches squared. We're going to do 2 more questions. So let's say you have a tank that's in the formula, or that's in the shape of a cone, and it holds water. And you want to paint this tank. So you're going to paint the outside, you're going to paint the top. And 1 gallon will cover, the paint covers, we'll say 40 square meters per gallon. So each gallon of paint, you can paint 40 square meters. How many gallons do you need? How many gallons do you need is the question. And they're going to tell us that the slant height is 100 meters and that the radius is 35 meters. So you have this tank that you're going to paint. The slant height is 100 meters, the radius is 35 meters. Each gallon of paint will cover 40 meters squared. So how many gallons of paint do you need? Well, if you're going to paint something, that means the surface area. So we have our 2 numbers. We're just going to plug it in the formula. Pi, radius, slant height, plus pi, radius squared, 35 squared. We have to do the exponent first. Plug it into your calculator. 35 squared, 35 times 35 is 1225. You're going to do the multiplications first and then the addition. So pull the multiplication into your calculator. 10,996 plus 3.14 times 1225 is 3846.5. Do the addition. You get 14,842.5 meters squared. That's the surface area. But that's not what the question is asking us. They're asking us how many gallons of paint do you need. So if you need to cover 14,842.5 meters squared, and each gallon will cover 40 meters squared, how many gallons do you need? You just do the division. That's how many you have per gallon. Will cover 40. So 14,842.5 divided by 40 is going to give you 371.06. You can't buy 6/100ths of a gallon, so you have to buy 372 gallons. And that's the answer to that question. We're going to do one more question that's going to be a little bit harder. So remember that in our formula we want the slant height, not the height. But what if they give us the height instead of the slant height? And so they tell us that the height is 3, the radius is 4. What's the surface area? So here we don't have the slant height, we have the height. We can't use that, but we can use it to get the slant height. So don't plug 3 in for slant height if they're giving you the height. The height is from the tip to the center of the circle. That's the height. We want the slant height, which is from the tip to the edge of the circle. So how do we get the slant height given that? Well, if you look at this, that forms a triangle. This isn't to scale, but they've given us 3, 4, and then this out here is really the slant height. So if we can figure out what this is, then we can figure out what the slant height is, that is the slant height, and plug it into our formula. So how do we figure out what the length of that edge is? If you remember, this is a right triangle, so we can use the Pythagorean Theorem. If you don't know what that is, you need to watch the Facebook video from March 29th, 2015 about the Pythagorean Theorem. So you can think of this as a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's the Pythagorean Theorem. Here a is 3, so we have 3 squared plus b squared is 4. Oops. Equals c squared. And c is the length that we need. So again, if you don't know what the Pythagorean Theorem is, you have to watch that video from March 29th. So now, 3 squared is 3 times 3 is 9. B squared is 4 times 4 is 16 equals c squared. 25 equals c squared. 9 plus 16 is 25. But we don't want c squared, we want c. How do you figure out what c is when it's got a squared? You take the square root of each side. The square root of c squared is just c. The square root of 25 is 5. So c equals 5. That's our slant height. So we use the Pythagorean Theorem. If we're given the height, we use the Pythagorean Theorem to get the slant height. So now that we have the slant height, we just follow our normal, like we have on all of our other problems. Plug it in to the formula. 3.14 times the radius, which was 4, times the slant height, which is 5, plus 3.14 times the radius, which is 4 squared. 3.14 times 4 times 5, plus 3.14. 4 squared is 4 times 4 is 16. You do the multiplication. 3.14 times 4 times 5, you can get 62.8. 3.14 times 16 is 78.5. You do the addition and you get 141.3.